Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's DISC mini class. This will be part 2 of our 3-part series on learning how to use DISC behavioral methodologies, assessments, and profiles to help us team build, hire and get the right people in the right seats on the bus, sell more effectively and engage more effectively with prospects and clients, and a plethora of other benefits that come with an understanding of basic human behaviors, what drives or motivates us to conduct those behaviors, and then finally, how to leverage an assessment called a sales skills index to really identify and hire the best sales professionals, and also work with our existing sales teams to help them improve their sales outcomes using these methodologies. My name is Erick Simpson from ericksimpson.com, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to work on the business with me rather than in the business. All right, all that being said, let me just catch us up from our last mini class where we covered the DISC methodology. DISC methodology identifies observable human behaviors, and it allows us to understand how individuals are wired naturally, how they adapt their behavior to succeed in their job role, and how we can identify these traits and behaviors that are natural and subconscious to each of us as human beings, and adapt our behavior to more effectively lead, mentor, manage, and engage with others and influence them in ways that simply aren't possible at that level without using this type of behavioral analysis. So some folks naturally adapt their behavior subconsciously and have learned how to do that. And we call these folks kind of, natural leaders, natural born leaders, natural sales professionals. It's just an instinct that they have, right? To me, leaders, you hear this, leaders are born, they're not made. Awesome sales professionals are born that way. I disagree. I think we can learn these behaviors and these activities and always improve. I mean, if that were true, what would the rest of us have to strive for, right? That aren't natural born, fill in the blank yourself. So we covered a lot of ground in the last mini class, and I would strongly encourage you, if this is your first participation in this series, to go back afterwards and watch the first episode, because I really get into depth on these natural and adaptive behaviors, what each of the behaviors means, what does DISC stand for, etc. Really the preface for today's session and the following session. So while DISC behavioral profiling tells us how we behave, the attitudes that put that thought into our mind actually drive that activity. So for instance, if we're wired to behave a certain way, it's our values and attitudes that determine our actions. And I want to, unpack that a little bit here. So, let's talk about, and this is basically your moral compass, right? Your attitudes, your values, your viewpoints, how you view and value life. This is all based upon your upbringing and your environmental, the impact that your environment and the people around you have impressed upon you and their value systems and things like that. Now, some of us, absorb and are informed in our behaviors and attitudes, or our attitudes more specifically, and how we view decision making based upon our upbringing. It could be our families, it could be our religious upbringing, it could be specific individuals in our lives that have mentored us, that have impressed upon us, this viewpoint and how we look at things. So for instance, some folks may think it's okay to, take home some office supplies from the office when they're working at home to get tasks done. Other folks may think that that's wrong. This isn't a class on what's right or wrong, but you see that our attitudes and values inform our perspectives on these things, and they actually drive our actions. So, once we're adults, these values are instilled upon us. They don't typically change. They're relatively consistent. They determine our purpose and direction, and they play out through our behaviors and our activities. So this is just one component of understanding human behavior, right? So how we behave is observable, but why we behave that way isn't as observable. And that's why we use these types of instruments and assessments to really evaluate our staff, our employees. When we're hiring, we use these during the hiring process because we want to make certain that the motivator that drives the behavior that we're looking for in our job roles aligns with what we can influence. So for instance, technicians or engineers and sales professionals have very different motivators and drivers that drive their behavior. Where a sales professional, in the purest sense of the word, is motivated by, compensation, commissions, bonuses. They're very competitive, and they may evaluate their performance against their peers based upon how successful they are at closing that large account and earning that big commission. So it's once we understand that a big motivator for a sales professional is compensation, then we can influence their behavior based upon how we construct comp plans and bonuses and spiffs, and focus them on selling different products and different services at different times by adjusting the comp plan. It's a little bit different for technicians and engineers who are probably not as motivated by the value of their compensation, but by other things such as training, exposure to new tools and technology, toys, things like that. And we're going to break this down so that we can really understand how a heightened level of appreciation of these motivators help us influence the performance and behavior, not only of our staff and our teams, but also any human being that we run across, our families, our children, our significant others, our parents. Once we understand what motivates and drives them, then we have almost a secret cheat sheet on how to influence that behavior. And I don't mean it from a nefarious perspective at all, right? I just mean, it's kind of a secret weapon to really understand, how someone behaves from a disc behavioral profile, and then what motivates or drives them to behave that way. So sometimes we can influence them from that perspective. So let's break down the 6 basic disc motivators, and they all each mean a different thing, and they may not mean what you think they might mean. So these disc motivators, just like disc behaviors, when we use a motivators assessment, they measure why we do the things that we do. They don't measure our ability. They don't measure our intelligence. They don't measure our experience. They don't measure our training or certifications. They simply measure the relative prominence of these 6 basic interests or driving forces, the way that we value life: theoretical, utilitarian, aesthetic, social, individualistic, and traditional. So for someone who is driven by the theoretical motivator, they are driven by a discovery of truth and knowledge. And as we go through today's session, I'm going to give you examples of each of these, and the relative and the two components that bookend a theoretical motivator for an individual. So really, someone who is thirsty for truth or knowledge. You see a lot of academics that are driven by the theoretical motivator. You see a lot of high level, I call the dragon slaying engineers and technicians, right? The discovery of truth and knowledge is the new cool technology, the new toy, the new shiny object. I want to understand that. That's a theoretical motivator. Someone who's driven by the utilitarian motivator is someone that is driven by compensation or by whatever they value as ROI, something that is an equitable exchange for their time and effort in any situation. Typically, it's going to be, money, currency, or something else of high value that they feel is an equitable exchange for their time and effort. They're not as altruistic as others from this motivator. There's got to be something in it for them in order for them to be motivated to accomplish a behavior. Sales professionals are a perfect example of the utilitarian motivator. Folks that are driven by the aesthetic motivator really are driven by an appreciation of beauty and art, music, creative self-expression. So these folks are motivated by the finer things in life and experiencing them. Folks that have the aesthetic motivator, you may know someone that when you go into their office or their home, they've got, music playing in the background. There may be a little water feature in their office. They may have a little Zen garden, with a rake and sand. It's very, calming, soothing, Zen, feng shui. That's kind of the aesthetic motivator. And, as we go through here, we're going to talk about ways that we can use this information to reward folks for performance, to incent them to go above and beyond, right? And why, one reward doesn't work for everyone, or two rewards, right? We have to really understand who it is that we're working with, and we're trying to incentivize or motivate in order to, really select the correct mode of influence for them. So the folks that are motivated by social drivers really want to eliminate hate and conflict between others. These are the folks that want peace and harmony in the office. They want everyone to just kumbaya and do it together, right, as a team, and succeed as a team. These folks are more likely to, do charitable activities outside of work. They may contribute to the food bank. They may help out with their church or the homeless and things like that. These folks really want to help others and are very altruistic about that. The folks that are driven by the individualistic motivator really are driven by the attainment or the search for power. They want to have the greatest power and influence to direct not only their own destiny, but the destiny of others. So these are the folks that are really influenced by having a title in front of their name, by having a lot of certifications, by having that title power, and they want to be recognized for their achievements. And you typically see folks with an individualistic motivator be, leaders in their business units or their organizations, politicians, folks that really are seeking that status. Now, they may see the attainment of those positions as a way to deliver, social and other, beneficial benefits to their constituents and things like that. But, the pure individualistic motivator is all about power. And the last one, the last motivator that we're going to talk about that exists in the basic 6 motivators of every human being is the traditional motivator. And this is simply a driver that is all about having a system for how we live our life. So for instance, having a schedule, on Mondays, after work, go to the gym. On Tuesdays, go to, take the kids to, ballet practice. On Wednesdays, do this. On Sundays, coach the Little League team. And it's very consistent and it's very structured. We go to church on Sunday morning. Afterwards, we go to brunch with, the grandparents and these types of things. Every summer we do this vacation. Every winter we do this vacation. So it's a very traditional system for living life. Now, this slide really illustrates the two sides of each one of these primary motivators. So the motivator, you'll see it in the middle. We just talked about them: theoretical, utilitarian, aesthetic, social, individualistic, and traditional. Now, the driving force on the left or the right are based upon each of these 6 keywords, and they each represent a level of drive from the concept of the motivator keyword. For example, the theoretical keyword is knowledge. Remember, we talked about the search for knowledge, the thirst for knowledge, right? The intellectual person over on the right side, the driving force for the intellectual person, they want all available knowledge on the subject at hand, regardless of its direct application, right? So these are the folks that'll be Googling something and 10 minutes later they're, on some webpage about nuclear, fission or something, right? It's just kind of that thirst for knowledge keeps them going. They want all the available knowledge regardless of whether it applies to what they're looking for now or not. It's just very interesting to them. On the other end of the continuum, the theoretical continuum, the instinctive person wants just the knowledge necessary to accomplish the task at hand. So in other words, both ends of the spectrum value knowledge differently. The 12 driving forces on this slide expand those original 6 motivators we just spoke about to give us more definitive information about what moves a person to action. That allows you to see the impact. The 12 driving forces allow you to see the impact they each have on each other and you and others as unique individuals. Each of us is a combination of all of our driving forces. And looking at them in this manner allows us to really understand our underlying causes for motivation. So let's unpack each one of these and look at the both sides of the continuum. So as we talked already, the focus of the theoretical motivator is knowledge, specifically how a person values knowledge, learning, and discovery. So the two ends of the continuum for the theoretical keyword are instinctive and intellectual. So the instinctive person, again, wants only the knowledge necessary to accomplish the task at hand. On the other end, the intellectual person wants all of that available knowledge. So let's take a look at the instinctive person. So people who value intuition are precise about what they need to know, focused on utilizing past experiences. So the instinctive person is going to leverage more heavily their past experiences when making decisions or understanding a topic, and will seek out new information only when necessary. They'll do a web search on a topic to address, a specific need and get that information. They're comfortable in situations when they can rely on past experiences. And they're even comfortable starting a project before gathering all of the necessary information, right? So this is that, I'm gonna take a stab at it from my gut instinct, right? So getting that gut instinct, and when things go horribly wrong, then they have to back up and really research what they're doing in order to fix what went wrong. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, of the theoretical spectrum, we have the intellectual person. Now, these, again, are the folks that are not only going to understand what they need to know about the specific issue, but they're going to learn and research until all the information that they need is discovered, right? They'll gather as much information as possible before starting a project, be very well prepared. And when confronted with a new challenge, they'll focus on gathering information first rather than relying on their gut instinct. So you can see the two ends of the spectrum here, from the instinctive driver to the intellectual driver. So the focus of the utilitarian motivator is utility, specifically how a person values practicality, usefulness, and gaining a return on all of their investments in time, talent, and resources. Remember, this is the example I used for sales professionals being motivated by compensation, right? The key word for the utilitarian is utility, and the two ends of this continuum are selfless and resourceful. The selfless person is more concerned with the completion of the task for the sake of completion or for the benefit of others, rather than what they will receive personally in return, right? So just the definition of selflessness. You need me to knock this out? Boss, I'm on it. I'll take care of it, without regard for what that means to them in terms of personal gain. On the other end of the continuum, the resourceful person is passionate about getting a return on their investment of time, talent, and resources. So in other words, both ends of the spectrum value utility. They just value it in different ways. The selfless person generously assists others with minimal expectation of a personal return for them. They'll accomplish tasks for the sake of accomplishment. They're going down the checklist. They're just knocking tasks out, right? Just busy, busy bee. They focus on the greater good rather than their return on investment. And they value people for who they are versus what they can provide, right? So just very altruistic, very selfless. The resourceful driver, these are folks that are driven to attain practical results, maximizing both efficiency and rewards in exchange for their investment of time, talent, energy, and resources. I mean, even connections, even referrals, even introductions to other people, they're looking for some sort of gain in exchange for that value. They're driven to maximize opportunities in order to create financial flexibility. So they'll work an opportunity to try to attain some type of financial gain, and they're very creative about it. They're energized by building a framework that maximizes their time and talent invested in a project. So they'll try to figure out many different ways to monetize the services they provide in as many possible ways as possible. And based upon their nature, they're sensitive to wasting time, right? It's a critical situation. They value their time so highly, they're sensitive to wasting it, their resources and or opportunities, and even favors, right? So they've got favors that they can call in. They're going to be very sensitive to when to call those favors in, and they're going to evaluate what they're going to get in return in exchange for that when making those decisions. The focus of the aesthetic motivator is their surroundings. Remember, we talked about, the music in the background and the water feature and the Zen garden and the feng shui, specifically how the beauty and form in their surroundings impact and influence their experience. So the two ends of the aesthetic continuum are objective and harmonious. The objective person focuses on the tangible and functional components of their surroundings. They prefer function over form. They really don't care what their office looks like as long as they can get done what they need to get done, right? So you see some folks that can operate, sometimes it seems like in the midst of a maelstrom, and I remember having a staff member where I'd walk into his office and I'd just ask him, where is your mouse? Where is your keyboard? How do you function under this mess? But they seem to have a unique facility to operate in the midst of chaos, which, I am just not wired that way at all. On the other end of the continuum, the harmonious person has a subjective focus on the experience and totality of their surroundings, often preferring form over function, how things look, how things smell, the experience that you have in this environment. They're living for that experience. Seek to beautify and harmonize the world around them. So in other words, both ends of the spectrum value surroundings. They just value them in different ways. The objective driver is a person that views everything in pieces, not as a whole. So there doesn't need to be rhyme or reason to how things are. They are just focused on the pieces they need from whatever situation they're in to accomplish their goal. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to get done, right? It doesn't have to be beautiful. As long as the ends justify the means, we got it done. They focus on the functionality over the harmony of a situation, okay? People who are able to compartmentalize chaotic situations and focused on the desired outcome are the folks that are going to be the objective drivers. They're really not concerned with, what the aftermath looks like as long as the job got done. And they can thrive in an environment filled with noise, chaos, distractions, things like that, because they're able to compartmentalize and focus on small parts of the task at hand. The harmonious driver are the folks who value and enjoy beauty, the experience of their surroundings, and seek balance in their lives. They flourish in an environment where they have the opportunity to create harmony and balance in their surroundings and relationships. They'll focus on the totality of a situation to ensure a rewarding experience or interaction or environment. They feel a high level of satisfaction when they're able to create rapport and tranquility with others, right? Zen, kumbaya, do things together, everyone's in harmony, etc. Okay? The focus of the social motivator is others. This is the altruistic, I want to help others, I want peace and harmony among everyone. Specifically how a person values giving, right? Charity, being of service, and helping others, the go-giver folks, right? The two ends of the social continuum are intentional and altruistic. The intentional person will assist others if they see a connection to something important to them, right? They're passionate about a cause, a driver, achieving a goal. On the other end of the continuum, the altruistic person has a focus on others and the benefits they can provide to them. The intentional person is someone that really is after something that is important to them. The altruistic person is focused on the benefits that they can provide to others. So those are the two ends of that continuum, right? They each value others. They just value them in different ways. What can you do for me rather than what can I do for you? Apologies for that slip up there. So the intentional driver includes folks that assist others for a specific purpose, not just for the sake of helping. You're starting to see some connections between some of these drivers and others, right? You can think that that some of these drivers really reflect someone that is out for benefit for themselves, and we've seen that already with the utilitarian driver, and now a little bit with the social driver at a certain end of the spectrum, right? The intentional social driver sees the world as a tool set to accomplish their goals. This is very tactical, strategic. How can I leverage this driver to get what I need? They see the importance of keeping emotions out of business decisions, right? So very stoic, almost, those folks in the last mini class we talked about with a super high S in their disc profile, very emotionless, good poker players. And they'll help develop an individual if they see opportunities for future return, right? So I will help you if I can leverage that development within you to help me in the future. Okay? So very, very specific, a little bit, self-centered, right? The altruistic, again, look at the definition of the word, and it kind of explains what this driver means. These are folks that want to help others by giving generously of their time with no expectation of personal or potential return. They've got the ability to instinctively notice and respond to people in need. They believe people should have the opportunity to be the best that they can be. And they may sacrifice personally in a situation if the outcome is a detriment to others, right? So very, very interesting. The focus of the individualistic motivator is power. How a person values individuality, status, renown, personal influence, their brand, their image, etc. The two ends of the individualistic continuum are collaborative and commanding. The collaborative driver will focus on dispersing power through teamwork and supporting a leader or cause without the need for personal recognition. This is one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, the commanding driver has a focus on control. These are the folks that want personal gain and recognition. There's got to be something in it for me in order for me to be influenced to take action. Both ends of the spectrum value power. They just value it in very different ways. So on one end of the spectrum, the individualistic spectrum, we have the collaborative driver. People that feel comfortable in a supporting role. These are not going to be your decision makers. These are not going to be your leaders. These are not going to be the folks that can carry the weight of really critical decision-making activities on their shoulders and be successful at it. They want to be supporters. They want to help without the need for recognition, right? They want to be the supporting cast. They focus on the greater good rather than advancing their personal position or for personal gain. They like being behind the scenes and just working to get things done. And they can set aside their own agenda for the good of the company or for the good of a greater cause. The commanding driver includes folks who value status, image, recognition, and control over their own freedom and destiny, and even over the freedom and destiny of others. When they feel strongly about a situation, they will apply the end justifies the means concept, right? They're all about getting it done and about having that personally reflect positively on themselves, right? Instead of congratulating and passing the recognition onto the team, these are the folks that will turn that success that the team has helped develop and deliver into a way to personally benefit from them and make themselves look good. They'll work hard and long to advance their position and are passionate about creating something that leads to an enduring legacy. So these are the folks that, hey, I'd love to have my name on that building. I'd love to do these things where my legacy transcends me over time. The last one we're going to talk about are the traditional drivers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this back into how to use this knowledge to influence, incentivize, and motivate others that we've identified that have these different drivers. So the focus of the traditional motivator is methodologies, meaningful and defined systems that align with their personal beliefs, a process for living, in other words. So the two ends of the traditional continuum are receptive and structured. The receptive driver has a desire for new ways to accomplish the task at hand, always looking for new ways to do something different, new, better ways. On the other end of the continuum, the structured driver focuses on proven methods and tried and true approaches. I don't want to change for change's sake. If it's not broke, why fix it, right? We want to stay in the structured way of doing things. And both ends of the spectrum value methodologies just in very different ways. So the receptive person is someone who is open to new ideas, methods, opportunities that fall outside of a defined system for living. They're almost contrarians, right? Challenging the status quo. Why continue to do it that way? Why almost change for change's sake, if you will? They're always looking for new ways to accomplish routine tasks. They like to set their own plan to guide and direct their actions, right? I know I can do it that way. It's been done that way for 100 years, but, I'm going to do it this way, okay? They're creative when interpreting systems and will adopt aspects of them if they see a benefit, right? So very individualistic in that regard. The structured folks have a traditional approach, right? They value the tried and true, proven methods and a defined system for living. This is, how I'm going to do these things. This is the process to do this, and I'm going to follow it. This is how I organize my calendar. These are the activities I do every day, month, year, etc. When they believe in a cause, they will work diligently to advance it, right? But there's got to be structure. They place a high value on following and implementing systems, and they'll foster and protect their principles and beliefs to ensure consistency throughout the organization. So we've covered the 6 primary motivators, and we've covered the 12 drivers around these. So how do we take this information and leverage it to the benefit of our organizations, our staff, our significant others, ourselves, etc.? Once we understand that these motivators influence behavioral styles, we can then use this information to create really effective incentive and rewards programs for staff, team members, individuals. I mean, even our kids, our significant others, and things like that. Not in a, like I said, not in a, using this for the benefit of all, not for personal gain, is kind of how I look at it. So let's look at, when we take these assessments, and this particular assessment is different than the DISC assessment. It's a separate assessment. It's called a motivators or driving forces assessment. And it identifies what motivates each one of us. And as you see, there's one page in this assessment that ranks us very similar to what DISC ranks us, but in these 6 primary areas, and then in the 12 driving, the larger 12 areas. And so by looking at the report and analyzing the data, I can see that in this particular screenshot, this person's highest motivator is the utilitarian. It's the first motivator, okay? So if I were to want to construct a program or an incentive initiative to influence this individual, I would definitely heavily weight it toward compensation, bonuses, commissions, things like that, because the utilitarian person wants that hard ROI for their investment in time, effort, and energy. Remember? Now, the second highest rank on this person's motivators profile is the theoretical, okay? Now, if the theoretical was their highest motivator, then my incentive initiative would not rely on compensation and bonuses and commissions. Instead, it would rely on things that feed the theoretical motivator, which is the search for knowledge, right? And depending upon which side of the spectrum they're on, I would adjust my incentive. So for someone that is the epitome of the theoretical, at the highest level, they want to search for knowledge and want to understand everything. The great motivator for them would be training programs, classes, sending them off for certification training, things like that. That would be a great incentive for someone that is very highly driven by the purest form of the theoretical search for knowledge. So let's look at the third one over to the right. The purple one is the aesthetic. Remember, these are the folks that want to appreciate beauty and harmony and art and in life and in others, right? So if the aesthetic were the primary motivator, my incentive or rewards program would include options such as tickets to the theater or a ballet or to a really high level 4 or 5 star restaurant or a spa weekend at a resort somewhere where they can appreciate beauty and harmony and things like that. That would be a great set of options for someone whose primary motivator is the purest form of aesthetic. The social motivator is the next one over. Now, if the social driver were the highest motivator for an individual, then some of the things that we could think about offering them as rewards could be contributing to their preferred charities, right? Hey, achieve these milestones and we'll kick in, $100 to your favorite charity, or going to work with them at the soup kitchen, right? Or they're, helping feed the homeless, or whatever their cause is. Remember, they're social. They want to help others. And in the purest sense of the social, on the right side of the spectrum, they're going to be very altruistic and giving. And they just want peace and harmony among everyone else. So things that they really are passionate about, they will value your contribution in terms of your activity in helping them address their desire to help others. The individualistic driver here, this is the person, remember, that wants power, wants title, wants recognition in the purest sense on the right side of the continuum. If I were going to create an incentive or rewards program for this person, it would be some sort of a succession strategy within the organization that gives them more title power, more responsibility to lead and manage others, right? So these are the folks that want the fast track up the ladder of success. Those would be some options I would consider for these folks. Now, the final one is the traditional motivator or driver. Now, remember, these are folks that have a very structured, on the right side of the continuum, the very structured methodology for living, right? They have a structure around that. So for that individual, you would consider things like, well, if they have these events during the week, for instance, picking up the kids from school or taking them to school or whatever their schedule or calendar requires, even, social things in the evening where they have to leave work early or come in late, things that we can do to help them accommodate that structure in their system for life are very, very attractive as motivators and rewards for those types of folks. Okay? So I hope that this second in the 3-part series of understanding human behavior, what motivates them, really helps give you an insight into how to evaluate individuals, how to adapt your behavior, and how to create ways to incentivize and influence them to achieve even greater performance and success with you in whatever form that takes. Next week's mini class will be all about using a third type of assessment called the Sales Skills Index. And while the DISC behavioral profile and the motivators and driving forces assessments do not measure intelligence or training or experience or any of that, just observable behavior, the Sales Skills Index, in fact, does measure the understanding of an individual of the 7 steps in the sales process. And it allows us to rate them by asking them to answer several scenario questions and to understand which of the 7 steps of the sales process are they very strong in, and which of the 7 steps of the sales process do they need help in. So as a refresher, the 7 steps of the sales process include the first step, which is prospecting and preparation. The second step is the warm-up during the first meeting with the client. The third step is qualifying that prospect during that first meeting. The fourth step is presentation, so presenting the solution, maybe on a second meeting to the client. The fifth step is overcoming objections. The sixth step is closing the opportunity. And the 7th step is follow-up, where we come back and ask for more business, ask for referrals, etc. So it measures someone's understanding and rates them in each of these 7 steps. And it really gives us an idea of what it takes to train someone as a brand new sales professional, how much time it's going to take to invest in training them, or to polish existing sales professionals that are already on the team. Maybe they need a little more help in the warm-up. Maybe they need more help in closing or overcoming objections. So that's what the Sales Skills Index teaches us, or gives us the information in order for us to take action to improve our sales outcomes within our organizations and within our teams. If you find value in this mini class, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Here's my contact information, and I'd be happy to get on a 30-minute call with you and see how I can help you improve your business outcomes and help you achieve your business goals. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you next time.